All right. We're going to try this again. Okay, hopefully everything goes. Okay, Ron Lurie, good afternoon, folks, or good evening. As you can see, the video is titled, Why Does This Keep Happening? Will it happen again? Everyone knows what I'm talking about. We've all heard about what took place in Uvalde, Texas. Whatever you want to pronounce it. But is there anything that we're doing in this country that could potentially prevent or limit the chances of this happening again? Or as we've talked about in previous broadcasts, is this something we just have to live with? Kids going to school and never coming home. Is that the new norm in America? Or are we going to try to do something? Are we going to try to, I guess you'd say, take a stand, for lack of a better term? Are we going to do something? Arshafin, you're saying we need to do something. Most folks do agree we need to do something. However, the question is, what defines something? What is that something we need to do? That's where you got the differences. Now, DJ Doc, you're saying no AR. Obviously, there's a lot of folks who disagree with that. An 18-year-old had just turned 18 and purchased 2 ARs within a few short days of turning 18. Gun control, complete failure in Chicago. Criminals do not listen to laws. Well, you don't have gun control in Houston. You don't have gun control in St. Louis. You don't have gun control in Baton Rouge, and they're murdering the hell out of each other. So I go back to the original question. What do we need to do? Or do we just accept this? Now, what is that? I can't pronounce the name, but you're saying bring back parenting and discipline. Have we completely lost discipline in our children? Some of these children come from pretty good households. They're not all coming from broken households or, bad backgrounds. I mean, this guy was able to purchase 2 ARs right after turning 18. So he clearly wasn't coming from an impoverished household. Except for what it is to try to keep crazies from getting guns, that is all you can do. Well, we have to ask ourselves, do you believe an 18-year-old, on average, because every 18-year-old is going to be different, but on average, is an 18-year-old mature enough to go out and purchase an AR-15 and not do anything stupid with it? That's what we need to start asking ourselves. Because remember, you don't need training or anything. You can just go out and buy it. And for folks who thought that this guy had this gun illegally, no, he legally, in the state of Texas, at the age of 18, you can legally purchase an AR-15. Who said he bought the guns legally himself? The news media said it. You don't believe him or something? The news media said that he purchased the gun. Well, we'll bring in DK and we'll definitely, let me go ahead and make sure I hear you. Okay, can you hear me there?
I ain't a troll. People think I'm a troll, but I'm not a troll. What do you think we should do to make background checks better for gun regulation?
Well, the question is, in some states, do we even have background checks at all? I mean, go ahead.
Some states I've heard we don't.
Yeah. So, but keep in mind, this kid had no prior criminal history. He would have passed a background check. He would have passed a background check. He didn't have any. I mean, he had things that may have red flagged him with psychiatrists and, maybe school officials or his family, but legally, he did not have any issues that would have caused him to fail a background check.
Well, wait, did he actually? Wait, so he shot up in elementary school?
Wait, repeat that?
He shot up in elementary school, correct?
Yeah, we're talking about the event that took place yesterday. The 18-year-old that went to an elementary school after trying to assassinate his grandmother.
He killed 14 kids under the age of 11.
Okay, have you not heard of this whole event? Because you sound like you're kind of. There's a lot more kids that were killed. First of all, I believe it was 19. So there was a lot more children. Yeah, they killed a lot more children.
I probably researched that. I just heard something about his shooting. That's literally it.
Okay. Well, an 18-year-old who had just turned 18, and he was able to purchase an AR-15 legally, and he went to a school and shot up 19 children, and he also took the lives of 2 teachers there.
What the fuck? That's just. I'm sorry. I can't even. This is just
Okay.
disgusting.
All right. Okay, well, look, I want to move the program on, but I do appreciate you coming in here. Okay, let me see. I'm amazed that someone does not know the basic logistics of what happened. But Dehan, I see you in there. Secure our campuses. Yeah, I agree.
Hey,
Dehan.
you know, I was talking
Go
to a
ahead.
gentleman today, and this is what he thinks we should impose with the gun laws. In order to get a gun, you have to do a mental health examination before you can even think about being able to get one. What do you think about that?
Who was suggesting that?
Another gentleman that I was talking to online today.
Do you agree with that? Do you agree with that?
I do agree with that. I really do. I really do. In order to purchase a gun, there should be steps in place besides just being able to purchase a gun and being of age. What do you think?
What do you take from the phrase "your Second Amendment rights shall not be infringed upon"?
Yeah, I know, but sometimes I feel like we have to go with the times on that too, I mean, we're living in a society where it's very easy to get a gun, no matter if you buy it or not.
Well, I want to post this map in my background for those who can kind of see the map of the United States behind me, because there's a lot of folks who are concerned with or suggesting that he was not able to purchase this firearm legally. The map behind me, the blue states are where you have to be 21 to purchase a rifle. All of the red and pink states, you can get a rifle at the age of 18. Some of the states have a law themselves that says you can get it at 18. The other states have it, whereas they refer back to the federal minimum age. But in all of those states you see behind me that are in pink or red, you can purchase a rifle at the age of 18. So for folks who are suggesting that he could not have gotten a gun legally, you see there's very few blue states behind me. It looks like Florida, Illinois, Washington, and California, and it looks like there may be Vermont or something up there.
Yep.
But outside of those states, in every other state, you can get a rifle at the age of 18 legally.
So my question, because I watch you a lot, what is your feeling about them having to go through a mental health background?
I'm totally a fan of going through a mental health background check, doing some type of psych eval on the individual purchasing a weapon. But here's my take on it. This is where the liberal in me comes out. I believe you should be able to purchase a firearm to defend yourself. It's the tyranny part that you kind of lose me on. And I understand folks want to purchase a firearm so that they can stave off a tyrannical government. The reason I'm in favor of self-defense versus tyranny, so to speak, is because tyranny, when you are able to purchase a firearm based on being able to stop a tyrannical government, that's when you can now purchase really big stuff, because you need to be able to combat the government. Having a firearm to simply defend yourself could be a shotgun or a handgun. But if you're talking about staving off tyranny, then you need access to everything the military has. And that's when it gets to be crazy. And that's just my take. I understand that's not a popular take in its form, but that's my take.
Okay, but you kind of agree with me about having to have some type of mental background check or something like that. That I mean,
absolutely.
And I feel that's a good thing. I think, in our world today, I think that's what we actually need. I mean, I understand that, if you want a gun bad enough, you're going to be able to get one. But to purchase one, it would help.
Well, I will say this. If firearms were harder to get, yeah, if you really want one bad enough, you would get it. But let's look at what happened when President Obama became president. Folks automatically thought he was going to be trying to take away guns. So the price of firearms shot up. For your average low life criminal, you can make it so that a gun is even on the street becomes too expensive for him to obtain, him or her to obtain. Because I believe when Obama took office in 2009, the price of ARs tripled. If you're just a regular street criminal using this for basic crime, that may be out of your price range at that point. And I do believe, because someone also talked about regulating ammunition and things like that. I think Chris Rock made a joke about it. Charge $500 per bullet, and that would stop people from using bullets willy nilly. I think there may be some legitimacy in hitting them on the back end. I can see that.
Yep, I can see that too. Because it is pretty ridiculous how people just think that they can take law into their own hands and kill somebody. And it's just ridiculous. We live in a crazy world.
Yeah. Okay, well, I appreciate. Go ahead. Yeah, fair enough. Well, I appreciate you coming in. I want to move it on, but I don't know. Hopefully we get the background checks.
Yep, I enjoy watching your show all the time, and I watch it all the time, man. Even though I'm not a liberal, I'm basically, an independent. But I feel like us as adults and humans, we should be able to disagree and still be on some common ground and not hate each other.
100% agree. I appreciate you coming through, man.
Yep, thanks for letting me in, sir.
Absolutely, and thanks for watching. Have a good night. Okay, let me move it on. Definitely was a pleasure talking to the gentleman there. Let me read in the comments here. Who's going to protect you? Duck Hunter. Let me say this in regards to that statement. Here's one thing I do not understand. We're supposed to be the land of the free, home of the brave. Everybody wants to come to the United States. Yet we're being told, particularly by pro-Second Amendment folks, and I believe in being able to protect yourself, but one thing I don't understand is that we're being constantly told that America is so evil. The citizens of America are so tyrannical that if we do not have guns, the United States government, whether Trump is in office or Biden is in office, the United States government is instantly going to turn into Saddam Hussein, Stalin, or Hitler and become tyrannical. Your neighbor is instantly going to try to kill you, and all of the gangbangers and mafia and everything is going to rise up and just create chaos across the country. That's essentially what the pro-gun crowd tells you, is that every American is so evil that your ability to own a firearm is the only thing that stops other Americans from becoming monsters. Because that's the whole complaint. If you take away guns, the government is going to take away all your rights, and they keep bringing up Hitler and Stalin and Saddam Hussein. Do we really believe our fellow Americans are that evil that the only thing that stops our neighbors, our politicians from becoming monsters is the fact that we all have guns? It's not happening in other countries. That's the problem I have, is that in countries where they have tried some type of gun limitation, the politicians and the citizens of those countries did not turn into monsters. In this country, if you take away guns, the citizens are going to start making bombs. They're going to start using knives. It just sounds like a picture of hell. That's what we're being told. If you take away guns, everybody's just going to turn into a freaking monster, like a zombie movie. Why do we think that? Why do we actually think that? I'm curious. Let's move on to One Chevy. We're rights all the time, and only gun rights get people in. That is true. That is 100% true. Hang on, One Chevy. G.I. Joe said, like the name, G.I. Joe said, we're taking away rights all the time, and only gun rights get people in their feelings. That is 100% true, because I painted the picture last night on the other broadcast that in order to save the Second Amendment and protect your gun freedoms, you're limiting other freedoms. I mean, look at what we got now. No school in America is probably going to have an unlocked door at this point. That is a freedom you're losing. As a parent, you can't get access to your kids without going through all kinds of checks and balances just to get into school. You're losing other freedoms to protect your gun freedoms. One Chevy, good afternoon or good evening.
Good evening, sir. How are you doing this evening?
Oh, I'm trying to make it through, man. I'm trying to make it through. Is there anything to do to stop this crap from constantly happening?
To be honest with you, brother, I think we need to try to figure out what the exact problem is. Me and you are from the same generation. We're Gen X. I'm not sure how it was in Chicago when you come up as a kid. Where I'm from in South Mississippi, as a teenager going to high school, there were trucks in the parking lot all over the parking lot during hunting season. Guns are in the trucks. They're hanging in the back windows and gun racks. There was never a problem like that back then.
Well,
What
let me
happened
ask.
between 1985 and now?
Well, let me ask you this question: when you were younger, because I mean I knew folks who had Saturday night specials and and revolvers and things like that. But I guess back in those days, it would have been the M16 or maybe even the M14. Did you know folks who owned, was there even a civilian version of the M14? I mean, because that's what the
No,
AR-15 is.
not at that time. The biggest thing back then was the AK-47, and it
Okay.
still is. I mean, the AK is just a standard platform for something like that.
Did you
But
know a lot of Americans when you were younger that had AK-47s in their possession?
yes,
Okay, I did not. That's why I'm asking that. I definitely did not. So,
the
it's
AKs and the SKs were, they're both Russian made. The SKs were more. There was a lot of them that were Chinese made. But yeah, my dad, back, oh God, give you an idea how old, back when Sears and Roebuck still sold guns. My dad went and bought a SKS still in the Cosmoline in a wooden crate from Sears and Roebuck for like 150.
I would say in regards to like you're talking about from back in the day compared to now. I kind of wonder if some of this stuff was not happening back in the day and we just were not told because we now live on a 24-hour news cycle. So when something happens, you know about it. You take what happened down in southern Texas, for instance. Let's say it wasn't 19 students, but maybe five. In the 1970s, would that have been major news? I mean, it may or may not have been major news. So I kind of wonder if it was not indeed happening and we just weren't being told about it.
Uh, I don't think it may have happened. I'm not going to say it didn't because I don't know. But I think if any time a shooting like happened in Uvalde happens, that would have made national news because at that time that would have been the hot news story because, like you said, it wasn't 24-hour news back then. And that would have been a hot news story and it would have been front page of every paper. But the reason I say I don't think it was happening because, like I said, in where I went to high school at, hunting season down here is a big thing, and kids would have their shotguns, their rifles, and stuff in the trucks hanging in the windows for everybody to see, parked in the school parking lot, and there was never a problem with it.
So I'm starting to wonder, which is the same question I was asking last night on the broadcast, is this just as a condition to maintain the Second Amendment rights and freedoms in this country? Is this just something we're gonna have to live with? Just like you hear about a car accident, you continue on in your life. Is it going to get to the point where okay, a school got shot up in San Antonio, so what? You go back to class. I mean, is it going to get to the point where it's just like that?
Well, I hope not, God, I hope not. I truly do. But at the same time, I sat down and done some research today.
Okay,
There's
I'm gonna switch my.
130,930 schools in the U.S. The 40 billion that we sent to
How
Ukraine,
many?
130,930 schools, private and public schools in the U.S. The 40 billion that
Okay.
we sent to Ukraine would have paid for security guards for multiple years for each one of those schools.
Well, but here's because I'm hearing about the Ukrainian money on everything from homeless vets to what you're. My question is this: Russia just went into Ukraine in February of this year. We've
Mhm.
obviously been having school shootings for well over a decade now. Why didn't somebody suggest this before the Ukrainians were attacked?
Oh,
This
I
has
agree.
been happening. This isn't
I
new.
agree completely. We're not disagreeing on that at any point. Are we disagreeing on that? That is something that
Okay.
I've been advocating for years now. We can send millions to other countries. Let's take care of our own first.
Yeah. So, is there any way, like I said, as a condition of maintaining the Second Amendment, as long as you allow everyone from the age of 18 on up to purchase some type of deadly firearm, is there any way we could really stop this at all without somehow limiting that ability? As long as they can purchase firearms, how can we possibly even dream of stopping this?
To be honest with you, I have no clue. I truly have no clue. And I don't
Yeah,
think banning the guns is an answer because criminals don't obey the law to start with. That's why they're criminals. But
well,
there's more guns in the U.S. than there are people, so you're going to have access to firearms regardless if you ban them or not.
Well, in regards to saying banning the guns won't help because criminals are not going to follow the law, I would say, based on that statement, why have laws to begin with then? They're not going to follow any law. Like, for instance, the war on drugs. Why would you have a war on drugs with tough laws on drugs under the expectation that folks are going to stop getting high? I mean,
The
essentially, that
problem
would
with the
apply to
war on
everything.
drugs was our own government was shipping a lot of the drugs into the U.S. I mean, that's been proven.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I understand what you're saying, but I get what you're saying. I'm just simply saying that if the mindset is, banning guns is not going to work because criminals are going to get guns anyway. That mindset could be used in regards to virtually everything we have laws against because the criminal's going to do it anyway. Like when folks say, well, maybe the penalty for this crime needs to be higher. Well, criminals going to still do it anyway. So I'm just
yeah.
simply saying that mindset could apply to a lot of stuff.
There's somebody that keeps coming into the comments that I've seen 3 or 4 times now. It says ban assault rifles. Please explain to me what an assault rifle is. Uh,
Yeah, I
AR-15 is
get it.
not an assault rifle.
Well, the way I've heard it, and I used to fall for it as well. I'll just say that anything that looks like what typical soldiers carry. I mean, it looks like the type of a weapon you see in a soldier's hand. So that's what, and I'm not saying they know the first thing about guns at all. I mean, I admit, even though I carry, I'm ignorant on most firearms. However, I will say that that's when they say assault rifles, they're stuff like what you see there. You mentioned the AK-47, stuff like that. That's what they're talking about, is weapons that they normally see in the hands of military fighters.
Right. Now, I will say this, and I know this is on a different subject, but my nephew has got a little BB gun that from 10 foot away, you pulled that on me, I would put you down. That thing looks just
Well,
like my AR.
fortunately,
It is just like
yeah.
my AR.
Well, fortunately, they have realized the problem with that and started doing everything from painting bright colors on toy guns. When I was a kid, you could purchase a toy gun that, cap gun or a BB gun, and they looked exactly like a replica. But unfortunately, folks started using those toy guns to commit real robberies.
Well,
And yeah, so
this
now
BB
they do
gun
paint all
he
kinds of
got it
colors and
less
stuff.
than he got this BB gun back at Christmas, brand new at Christmas, and I'm telling you, I have picked it up and held it, and without just sitting there holding it in your hand, staring at it, you wouldn't know it's not my AR-15. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, and
it's
that can get you shot. That can get you shot. Okay, fair enough. Well, look, I want to move it on. I got somebody else in here, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know if you don't ban anything, you don't do anything at all. I just can't see how this does not continue to happen. Month after
I
month
agree,
after
but I
month.
don't see how it's not going to hurt the people, the law-abiding citizens, more than it's going to hurt the criminals. That's
Well,
kind
at
of
the
the
end of the
balance
day,
we're in.
and I get your point. Yeah, I get your point. But when you go to the airport, for instance, based on what Bin Laden and his crew did on September 11th, the vast majority of the people, well over 99%, the people who are hurt by airport security is not terrorists. That's kind of how the U.S. works. The vast majority of the people who are hurt by that stuff is law abiding citizens. When you go to the airport and you take your shoes off or take off your belt, you're a law-abiding citizen. You're the one that's being hurt by that stuff, not the actual criminal.
Yeah, I understand that.
Yeah.
Well, brother,
So,
it's been
all
good
right. Well,
talking
let
to
me
you. I know
move
you
it
got
on,
other
man.
people in the queue.
Absolutely. Anytime. Come on back through. Always good to talk to him. But yeah, I mean, like I was saying, essentially, all of our laws designed that way, whereas they hurt mostly innocent folks. DUI checkpoint. Most of the people they stop are not drunk. All of our laws to get criminals generally affect innocent law-abiding people more than they do the criminals. I cannot pronounce that. Ely. Can you
Eli.
hear me?
Eli.
Eli. Okay. Good evening. What's up? What's on your mind this evening?
How you doing, sir? I will
I'm
apologize in
doing good.
advance if my daughter wakes up. I gotta run out of here, but just letting you know.
Okay. Fair enough.
So I
Okay.
want to go to the point that the gentleman made about, years ago you didn't have all these shootings, and maybe we didn't know about them because we don't have social media. We don't have any of that. We didn't have any of that before. But
True.
I believe that what's happened since then, it's society. I mean, kids nowadays are so desensitized from. I mean, a kid nowadays see a dead body on the road, and they don't see it as a crazy thing because they see it on social media, they see it on TV, they see it on video games. I mean, we're not supposed to let kids play Grand Theft Auto, for example, or Call of Duty, but now we let kids 8 years old, 10 years old play all these games. What do you
Well,
think that's doing
but
to
let's
the
be
kids?
honest. Okay, well let's be honest. Most of the folks who are committing these type of mass events are not 7 and 8 year olds. They're generally at least
No,
16
no, no.
years
I,
of age
I,
or
I
older.
understand that. I understand that. But what my point is, if you're letting kids grow up with that mentality of seeing things like that, what do you think they're gonna feel? How do you think they're gonna feel about doing the same thing when that's all they've grown up seeing? Years ago, you didn't have any of these games. You didn't have social media. You didn't have, um, you know, uh, I can go on YouTube right now and see somebody killing somebody. You can go online
Yeah,
and see somebody killing somebody. You can
yeah.
watch fights nowadays just with with your phone. We didn't have
Yeah.
any of that. So I think what's happened is we as a society lost respect for life.
Well,
So
let me rebut. I get your point. I get your point that young children these days have access to a lot of adult material, and it can lead to them being desensitized. I get your point. Let me respond by saying this. How would you respond to the notion that children in other first world countries also have access to this stuff and they don't have the gun problem? A good example. I personally lived in Australia for 5 years. They get all of the same video games, Call of Duty, Grand Theft Auto, Fortnite. They get all the same video games. They get most of their television programs are American media, Law and Order, Cops. All of those shows are shown there. Yet they don't have the gun problem. What's the difference?
the difference is we have freedom in this country. They don't. They don't have the freedom we have. I mean,
They
look at
don't
what's
have
happening.
access to gun.
Look at what's happening in Shanghai, for example.
Wait. I mentioned Australia, and you went all the way down to Shanghai. Let's
Well,
stay with
oh,
Australia. I
okay.
understand there's
Let's
not
let
freedoms in
let's say
Shanghai.
Let's say Australia. Did you see
Okay.
all the people that got thrown in camps because they were not vaccinated, or because
Yeah.
they were positive, or just because they were close to somebody that was positive? These people would not be able to get out of those camps. Do you agree with that?
Okay. I do.
The only reason none of that stuff that's happening in those other countries has happened here is because we have the Second Amendment. Because people
Okay.
here will not stand for that.
Okay, let me respond with that because you're not the first person I've heard to talk about the way Australia handled COVID, and I'm agreeing with you that they went overboard with COVID. But I will say that I lived there for 5 years, and for the most part, you could achieve the American dream. Now, I will say this in regards to how they handled COVID. You would look at Australia and say they're not free because you mentioned whatever kind of cancer you're talking about, or how they were punished with COVID. They would look at us and see George Floyd, how many folks are incarcerated and have not even been convicted of anything. And I mean, how many folks are in American prisons right now, American citizens that have not been convicted of a crime just simply because they can't afford bail? So when you say that we're free and they're not, there are a lot of things these countries could point to in the United States and say, no, you're not free at all. Because I'm telling you, there are literally tens of thousands of Americans that are currently incarcerated that have not been convicted of anything. They're just there because they can't afford bail. So they're essentially serving time because they're broke. So I don't know if I would say
But
we
that's
could point at Australia and they can't point back. Go ahead.
but that's a different subject. I mean, we're talking now about
We're talking
not being
freedom.
able to.
We're talking freedom.
But if they had the money, then they would be able to get out.
That's not, if you, freedom is free. You shouldn't have to have money to be free. If you're free, you're free. Now you're talking about where if you had money, you'd have freedom. Then that's not
Well,
freedom.
if they didn't commit a crime, then yeah, you should be free. You shouldn't need money to be free. But if they did commit a crime and they don't have money to pay for it, how is that? I mean, that doesn't make sense.
Well, let me give you an example. According to our law, Kyle Rittenhouse did not commit a crime. He served time in jail. George Zimmerman, according to our laws, did not commit a crime. He served a lot of time in jail. O.J. Simpson legally did not commit any crime in California. He served 3 years in jail. There are plenty of Americans that go to jail that did not officially commit any crime. It happens all the time.
But that's, I mean, like in the case of Kyle Rittenhouse, he did serve time in jail, but it was
Why? Why?
because they had to wait for the trial. I mean, he did kill somebody. I mean,
Let
look at this guy. What's his name? Jussie Smollett. It wasn't a crime that he committed, right? He supposedly lied. They put him in jail for what 2 3 days, and they let him out. Why? Because he has money. But it
and
wasn't that he killed somebody. You know, we're
you're
talking different crimes too.
you're making my point that money is what is purchasing freedom for folks. You're not, if you're broke in America, technically you can find yourself in a situation where you're not free. You're admitting that.
No, I'm not. I mean, I'm what I'm saying is, like, again, Kyle Rittenhouse, he killed 2 people, so there has to be a trial for it. Now, he's being convicted of murder, so he has to stay in jail until that trial. Now, this
Well,
other guy, Smollett, he didn't commit a murder or a violent assault to somebody else, so there's no reason for them to put him in jail until the trial.
Well, let me respond to what Russ Caldwell, because he said something similar. Russ Caldwell in the comments are saying being held under suspicion is not the same as legal incarceration. You're in there with the same people. They're moving you around in shackles and handcuffs. Until you get out of their custody, it is the exact same thing as being incarcerated.
No,
A day.
I understand that, and I'm not, listen. I'm not
Okay.
saying there's no issues in this country. Is it the freest country in the world? Absolutely. I come from a different. I don't come. I wasn't born here. I came from Puerto Rico, and I get it that it's a state from or a territory of the United States. But this is the freest country in the world. Why do you think people want to be here and come here? I mean, it's because of the freedoms we have. And again, I'm not saying we're a perfect country. Maybe Kyle Rittenhouse shouldn't have been in jail, or maybe he should have been in jail. I'm not going to give my opinion on that because that's a different topic. But I'm not saying we're perfect, but you can't argue that we're not the freest country in the world.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. I'll
And
tell
and
you.
and, and when I say freedom, you know, the Second Amendment is protecting that freedom. Like, I don't know
Okay.
if you view the Second Amendment as a right to go hunting, but that's not what the Second Amendment is.
The
And
Second Amendment,
when you say
we
people,
all know we all know the three purposes of the Second Amendment: to hunt, protect you and your family, and to stave off tyranny. I think we're all in sync on
okay,
why
so
we have
hunting
a
is not
second.
there.
Huh?
Hunting is not one of them.
Well, to stave off tyranny and protect yourself and your family. How's that?
Right,
Okay.
right.
All right. Well, what I'm simply trying to say to you is in regards to America being the freest because everybody wants to come here. Let me first make it clear: every single first world country on earth, and even a lot of developing countries, have an immigration problem. So America doesn't have a patent on the immigration problem. We just happen to be one of the wealthiest countries next to a very with an incredibly long land border. So it's pretty easy to come here. But all of the other first world countries, UK, Australia, New Zealand, they all have immigration problems. Now, in regards to freedom, you can smoke a joint while banging a prostitute legally in a lot of Western Europe. You do not have those freedoms in the United States. So when
I
you
think you
start talking
can.
about
You can do that in Vegas.
one little tiny city out of the entire nation, that's not freedom. That's
No,
not
no,
freedom.
no, no.
And by the
I
way,
get your
and by the
point. I
way,
get your
hold on.
point.
And by the way, you can't do it in Vegas. You have to go to Pahrump. I read about it in a book. So I will say, I will say this. Whether it's interracial marriage, whether it's the Civil Rights Act, a lot of countries got this stuff right long before us. We just passed a law in allowing same-sex couples to be together. That shit's been legal elsewhere for a long time. So when you
Listen,
say that America is the freest country, the country on the planet, I tend to say, look, we're a great country to live in, but the freest, no, that's not true. Go ahead.
I'm not. We're not gonna agree on that. I still believe this is the freest country. Respectfully, um, but again, the when I talk about freedom, I mean, I get what you're saying about going to jail and about smoking a joint with a prostitute and about same
Yeah.
sex marriage and all that stuff. Yeah, I get it. We're not but like I said, we're not perfect, but we're always trying to get there. I mean,
So is
I don't
everybody
I don't
else.
I don't like to, and I'm Hispanic. I'm supposed to be oppressed. Based on my people, because I'm a minority, and I don't see it that way. I moved
Okay.
here when I was 19 years old, from Puerto Rico, by myself, and I own a house now. I own my car. I have a great job. So I don't think I'm oppressed. Um,
I
and
don't
and,
either.
and
I
and
don't either.
that's what I'm trying to say. In here, the only reason all that stuff that's happening in Australia with the COVID camps in Shanghai and all these other countries is because we have a Second Amendment, because they know that they can't do that to us because people here are not going to take it, because we just
Okay.
want to be left alone.
Okay, let me respond to that. I want to move it on, but you made a good point. Before I let you go, I want to ask you this. Okay, you said that we have a Second Amendment, so people are not going to take it in this country. Let me ask you a question. When did America adopt the Second Amendment?
1776.
When did America free folks that look like me?
I can't tell you the date because again, I'm not very
The
smart. Let's
point,
put it
okay,
that way.
fair enough. The point I'm trying to make is that you said we have the Second Amendment, so people are not going to take it. I'm trying to show you people were taking it in this country, lack of freedom, long after the Second
And
Amendment was
that
around.
and that's wrong. And that's
No, no,
absolutely wrong.
we know. Listen, I'm not denying it's wrong. I'm just simply going against your point that the second, literally, people took it for hundreds of years. You agree with that? That
I
people got
I
treated
I
like
agree.
people.
I agree with you, but I'm the type of person that I want to live now and forward. I don't want to look at what happened behind. And I'm not saying I suffered what your people suffered. I can't imagine that. I'm not gonna say because I'm a minority too. I went through what your people went through. That's not what I'm saying. But we have to get past that and look at
That,
today.
but it's not about hashing the grievance. I was not trying to hash the grievances of the past with you. The only reason I brought that up is because you suggested that in comparison to Australia or Shanghai, the Second Amendment protects us from our government mistreating us because they know we have guns. And I'm just simply telling you, most of America's history, even though we had the Second Amendment, the country was mistreating the citizens Shanghai style. They were still
Okay,
doing it.
what would you think would happen in the future if we didn't have the Second Amendment? Then would you think we would go back to that?
You know something? It's hard to say because I don't, and that's what I've started the program off with, is that we tend to believe, at least the folks who are pro Second Amendment, we believe that Americans are inherently evil, and the only thing that
No,
stops
no, no, no,
America.
no.
Wait, let me
I heard
finish.
you. I
Yeah,
heard you say that. No, I heard you say
yeah.
that before, and I wanted to address that too. We
Go
don't
ahead.
believe people are evil. We don't believe Americans are evil. We don't want our government to become evil. We're not talking about. I'm not talking about my neighbor
What's making
next
you
door.
think they are? What's making you think that Biden or Trump is going to turn into Hitler if you don't have a gun?
Well, have you seen again what's happening in other countries?
I have where give me any of our allies, France, Italy, Spain. Give me one of these countries that we're allied with that has a Hitler leading them.
Yeah, but it's not just allies. It's if it's happening in other countries, it can happen here too. Cuba, Venezuela, Shanghai, Australia. Again, with all this COVID nonsense, all
Okay.
these people, they are literally being oppressed. I mean, in Shanghai, there's people dying because they don't have food. They're locked in buildings with welded doors and fences. So,
All
what
right.
makes you think? What I'm saying is, do you think we're good and everybody else is bad? Like, just because it's in China and China doesn't mean that one of our presidents can turn into that same thing, because we're not going to have the same president for 20 years. Again,
Okay.
look at the society that's coming up now, desensitized. These are going to be the new presidents of the United States. So we're not
All
talking
right.
about tomorrow. We're talking about 10 years, 20 years, maybe less, maybe more. Who knows? But
Okay.
just because Trump or Biden are not that way right now doesn't mean that the next president or the next 10th president after them is not going to do it.
To me, and I gotta move it on, but you are so enjoyable to talk to, which is why I've given you some more time, and I see a lot of the
I
folks in the audience,
appreciate it.
and I know my audience is MAGAs. That's fine. That's who I prefer talking to. So I know you're going to resonate with them a hell of a lot more than I am. But at the end of the day, I make it clear I'm about free speech, and everybody gets to state their point, and that damn sure includes me. So I will just say this, that the possibility of something happening doesn't necessarily mean it will happen. Now, you're suggesting that if we get rid of our guns, you don't know who's going to lead the country in the future, and they could become Hitler. And that is absolutely true. But does it guarantee if we get rid of our guns, there's going to be a Hitler down the line? There's no way to know. Now, at the same time, I have to ask this question, because owning guns, essentially the way you're saying it, is kind of like an insurance policy. It gives us insurance against tyranny, against a foreign invasion. But what is the premium for that insurance policy? How much do you pay for in premiums on an insurance policy? It's all the deaths and mass killings we have in every month. So I think that is what the folks are, the liberal side, my side of the house, complaining about, is that they're suggesting that the premiums for this insurance policy aren't worth it. I
No,
understand you
it's
disagree, but go ahead.
I'm not saying we should trade the Second Amendment for a children's life. That's not what I'm saying. But in this society, it's not gonna change. Like I truly believe, and I'm only 33 years old. I truly believe that society it's only gonna get worse. So if it's not with guns, they're gonna do it with something else. So I think what we should do is protect our children, like we protect airports, like we protect the courthouse, like we protect churches, or like we protect our own politicians. That's how we
Okay.
should be protecting children.
Okay, fair enough. Well, I will say this in regards to your comment about society is going to get worse. If society gets worse, as what you're suggesting, then that means the premium cost. You knowing society will get worse will better prepare yourself and your family against anything that you need to defend yourself against. So you'll have more weapons, more protection, or whatever you need to defend yourself with. But if society is getting worse, that just simply means more of us are going to continue to kill more of us. Nobody else will be able to come in the country and mess with us. We got ourselves protected against foreign invasion and against tyranny. But the problem is we're killing ourselves. We're doing all of the damage we're afraid of from the inside. That's the point I'm trying to make.
But that's because we as a society have become so evil because of sin. It's because of ourselves. Because again, if we don't have the guns, we're gonna go out there like the guy in the parade ran over 50 people with a van. We're gonna grab a knife and kill our neighbor. It doesn't matter what tool we use. If we're gonna keep continuing to get more evil and evil, we're gonna kill however way possible. And I get your point. If you don't have an AR-15, maybe you won't kill as many people as if you had a 10-round Glock. I get that point, but we're still gonna kill people. So at
Okay.
this point, I
So
think we should protect
you're
our children.
doing exactly what I said in the beginning of the broadcast. You're painting a picture that America is essentially loaded with evil people. Everybody's evil, and the only way you can reduce evil is for everybody to be armed. Like you said, if we get rid of our guns, then folks are just going to start running each other over with cars.
No, no,
They're
no,
going
no,
to
no.
start.
I'm not saying. No,
You
no.
just
Yeah,
said
but
it.
I'm not saying everybody. I'm saying society
Enough people.
in a whole. It's just gonna keep doing what it's doing. Again,
Okay.
50 years ago, we didn't have the violence on TV and video games and all this stuff that we have now. People are changing. People are different. Nowadays, if you spank your kids, you go to jail. 20 years
But that,
ago,
I don't.
I,
Okay,
I, I got
well,
spanked.
I absolutely got to move it, and I gave you a whole lot of
I'm
time,
sorry.
but I guess no, you've been a really good guest. I really appreciate it. I guess where we just simply disagreeing is that all of the problems you're talking
I'm sorry.
about
You
in
cut
modern
off there for a
society.
minute.
Can you hear me? Did
Yeah,
I
I can
lose
hear you
you?
now, but you cut off. I didn't
Okay,
hear.
I
I'm
guess
here.
the only problem I'm having, the only area we disagree in is that I'm suggesting that all of the modern problems you're talking about from video games on up in America, those problems exist in other first world countries and they're not mass killing each other like that. They're just not
I
doing it. So,
and trust me, I understand that. I completely understand that. But again, we need to keep our freedom. I mean,
okay.
we can't. What these countries have become.
All right, fair enough. Okay, I got to move on. I got to
I'm
move on.
sorry.
I appreciate
Yeah.
it. Ray,
Thank you for the
come on.
time. Appreciate
We're
it.
here every night. You were definitely a delight to talk to. And I see folks saying the guest won. Let me make it clear to you guys, folks. No snowflakes on. I let the man get his opinion across. If he had told me to F off, I would have still let him continue talking. I understand my audience is predominantly right wing. I say that in every broadcast. There is no way in hell a guy talking like me to a guest like that will ever win. Period. So I didn't expect to win. But I let the man speak, and that's what at the end of the day it's all about. Free speech. It wasn't about winning. Bri 5310 definitely into the program. I'm assuming he's going to tell me also where to shove it, and I'm gonna let him do it. How are you doing, Bri? What's up?
Hey, I just can't stand when people refer to an AR-15 as an assault rifle. There's no such
Well,
thing.
let's try not doing that. We won't do that here tonight.
There's no such thing as an assault rifle. I can walk in my kitchen, I can
Okay.
have 1,000 different things that can be an assault weapon.
Right.
Second
Okay.
off,
Fair enough.
with the video games and stuff, let your kids play the video games. But when they're done playing the video games, sit down and talk with them so they understand it's just a video game. I think 90% of our
Well,
problem here in America is mental problems. You've got a huge portion of mental issues going across this country right now. It's rampant. And
so
you have
while if we know that is a major issue in this country, should we continue handing out guns while that remains unsolved?
yes, but then they should have mental background checks. Maybe that's what needs to change in a law.
But wouldn't that be a violation of your constitutional rights? If there is nothing wrong with you, you've given no reason to indicate that there's anything wrong with you. You have a Second Amendment right from birth that when you reach the age of maturity, you can own a firearm. You should, if you've done nothing to indicate that you have anything wrong with you mentally, how could they put up a block or a barrier to you obtaining a firearm based on there's nothing going on? That falls when they say shall not be infringed upon. That sounds like infringement.
Yeah, true. I guess you're right. I don't think there's any way really around that. But people are so worried about the gun violence, but nobody in this comment is talking about the number one killer in the United States, and that's drugs. Fentanyl was the number one killer last year in America.
Actually, I have heard the other. I actually heard handgun deaths were the number one killer. I've heard it the other way around.
With guns. With guns, handguns are the highest death rate with guns. But all around, fentanyl killed more people than COVID did last year.
Well, let me give you the reason why I think gun deaths are probably attracting more attention than fentanyl deaths. Is because most of the fentanyl deaths are voluntarily. You voluntarily took fentanyl and it cost you your life. A lot of the gun deaths are people that were not trying to do anything dangerous and they just lost their lives. So a lot more innocent people are probably dying from firearms than they are from fentanyl.
Well, and then a lot more people's lives innocently lost with car crashes in America than gun deaths.
Great point. Great point.
So we're gonna start banning cars?
No. That is an absolute awesome point. And let me say that America's injured or killed in car deaths. What do? They don't sit back and say that my ability to drive shall not be infringed on. They come up with seat belts. They come up with airbags. Look at the way cars started from the Model T and what you had to do to drive compared to now in 2022. They've done all kinds of safety measures. When it comes to guns, they've essentially done nothing. They've kept it the way it's been since the very beginning, despite all of the death.
They put safeties. I can remember the first gun I had didn't even have a safety on it. They put safeties on guns. They've put measures on guns to make them more user friendly and safer.
I got a Glock that has no safety on it. There's plenty of guns that don't have safeties on them, even now.
I have a 7mm. I have a 7mm that when my dad passed away, I took. It doesn't have a safety on it, but my AR-15, my 50 cal, my 45, my SKS, they all have safeties on them.
Here's the point I'm making. When they make cars safer, it's not optional whether you get to add the safety features or not. It is mandatory. With firearms, if you want to make it safer, you can. Here's a recommendation, but you don't really have to do that. That's the difference. If you allow cars to be...
Airbags can be optional. I mean, the side airbags and stuff, if you want to pay the extra money for the upgraded model. But if you just buy the base model, you're just going to get an airbag that's going to be in front of your face.
But I think you get the point I'm making, though, is that every single safety feature on firearms is 100% optional. There's a lot of safety features on cars that are not optional. You can't purchase a car without turn signals or without a mirror. They won't let you drive it down the street.
No, they wouldn't. But I have a 57 Chevy that doesn't have seatbelts in it because you don't have to put seatbelts in it.
Yeah, but you're talking about something that was grandfathered in. I'm talking about you can make a brand new firearm right now in 2022 that doesn't have any safety features on it. You cannot make a car in 2022 that's missing all those safety features. They will not allow it to be on the street. The government will not let you drive that. That's what I'm talking about.
Yeah, how old is your Glock that it doesn't have a safety on it? Because I've not seen any guns in any gun stores or at any gun shows or at any shooting competitions that didn't have a safety on it.
I'd have to pull it out. Well, it ain't that old. Maybe 3-4 years ago. What is it? A 44, the little 8-round single mag. There's no safety on that. There's no safety on that Glock.
Well, because I know any shooting competition I go to or my kids go to, because they also shoot competition shooting. Well, you're required to have safeties on all your weapons.
Well, I can't pronounce his name. DMX in the comments, and he said what I thought was true. No Glocks have safeties. I don't know of any Glock that has a safety on it.
My Glock 9mm has a safety on it. It's required. Okay, if I take it to a shooting range to do a competition, it has to have a safety on it.
Okay, well, look, let's not get too far off the point. I guess I'm just simply saying that at the end of the day, when you look at firearms compared to cars, and I know firearms, you have a constitutional right. You don't have that with firearms. So I'm not comparing apples to apples here, but I'm just simply saying when it comes to increasing gun safety, there essentially have been no laws since the days of the founding fathers to increase gun safety. There's essentially nothing. In fact, the few laws that had came around, they've removed them to the point where no background checks, no permits in a lot of states. There really is. They really have done absolutely nothing. So when you pointed out how many folks die in car accidents, it was a great point because it allows me to point out all of the things, even though we still have a lot of car deaths. We have done a lot of things in America to try to limit folks who die in cars, crumple zones, seat belts, all of this stuff. We have done essentially nothing to try to limit gun deaths. Essentially nothing at all. And even a few things we have done, they've rolled back, whether it's trying to common sense gun law or increasing the penalties. I mean, they don't want anything being done. So my question is, how can you possibly prevent this from happening anymore? Just like if you went to an accident where a bunch of unrestrained citizens flew out of the car and died, and the guy goes, "Well, I don't want seatbelts. My comfort inside of a car shall not be infringed upon." Well, how do you stop ejection deaths? You can't. There's no way to stop it.
Yeah. And you know, that argument popped up, what was that, in the early 90s with the helmet laws for motorcycles? I could see my dad when he go out riding, there was no helmet laws. When I was a kid, there was no helmet laws. But now it's required for you to wear a helmet. Not that it's going to stop you from dying, but it might help you.
It sure freaking helps. Let me say this in regards to Cal Warren in the comments. He suggested, and you tell me, how do you think of this, Brian? He said build sheriff outposts next to all schools. So in other words, you got a little sheriff substation next to every school. What do you think about a comment like that?
I don't agree with that, but I do agree with hiring armed security at schools. I don't see that that's a bad idea. They have armed security at football games, baseball games, soccer games. Why can't they have them at schools?
Probably because it costs too much. It probably will cost too much.
But if you're sending the kind of money we're sending,
you about to bring
if you're sending the kind of money we're sending overseas, not even just Ukraine, but all the countries we send money to, they can take a portion. If they can spend that kind of money to send overseas to other countries, they can make room for that kind of money here in America for schools. If they're that concerned about children's safety at schools.
Here's the problem I think that we would encounter. Fact is, despite what's going on with a lot of schools in this country, the average American school they do not, or better yet, for lack of a better grammar, will never have a mass casualty event. 99% of the schools in this country will never have a mass casualty event. So it's going to be hard to maintain paid armed guards at every school, because most of these folks people are going to look at it like that's wasted money. There's nothing happening here. I mean, most schools will never have a mass casualty event. So how many guards or sheriffs or whatever you want to use are just going to be sitting there all day twiddling their thumbs and will spend their whole career never being involved in a mass casualty event?
Well, in the late 80s and early 90s, we had a police officer at my high school in Tacoma, Washington.
Well,
never had a problem at that school with guns.
Yeah, but they had a problem at Parkland, Florida school, and they had a cop there, and he was afraid to even go into school while the guys were in there shooting everybody up. Even if you put armed guards or whatever you want to say at a school, how do you know that they're actually going to step up when it's time to answer the call of duty? You don't even know, because the Parkland school is a perfect example where you had an armed guy who was a police officer, by the way. He wasn't just just some armed security guard. He was an actual cop. And he actually ran and cowered while the guys are in there shooting up the school. So what you're suggesting might help, but Parkland shows that may not do any good at all.
It's the same thing. Well, airbags in your car might help, but depending on how severe the accident is, you're probably still going to die. Same with a helmet when you're riding down the street in a motorcycle. It might help, but you might die. There's a good possibility you're still going to die.
Okay, fair enough.
You see what I'm saying?
That's a decent rebuttal. Well, look, let me move it on, man. I got the other guy in it for a minute. I hate to cut you short, but let me move it on. And that's some good rebuttals, though. It might help. I don't know, but at the end of the day, I still, from the liberal side of me, suggest that as long as we maintain the Second Amendment right under the umbrella of shall not be infringed upon, I don't think there's any way we're going to stop this. This is just something we're going to have to live with as a condition of letting everybody own guns. Like you pointed out with cars, a condition of letting everybody drive vehicles is accidents. There's no way everybody can have access to a car without car accidents happening. If you allow everybody to have access to guns, there are going to be mass shootings. This is part of American society. I don't think there's any way to avoid that.
Yeah, true. I agree with you. But again, always good talking to you. I'll let you move on.
Absolutely. Really, it was such a pleasure. Okay, let me see who's in here. Joe the Goat. This is a fringe in the Second Amendment. Stupid people should be able to. Okay, Joe the Goat, turn your volume down. I'm hearing too much feedback from my own self.
Oh, my bad. I was in the car. I just parked.
Okay.
But what's the topic of discussion? Just want to make sure I'm on the same page.
Is there any way? Turn your volume down. I'm hearing myself something.
Hold on. Is that better?
Okay. Yeah, that's a lot better. All right. Okay. So, considering what took place in southern Texas yesterday, is there any way to maintain our Second Amendment rights and stop that from continuing to happen? 19 children dead, 2 teachers. This happens damn near every month. I mean, the big ones don't happen as often, but I believe I saw a report on Fox or CNN, 200 plus school shootings have happened this year. 200, and we're not even halfway throughout the year yet. Is there any way to stop such things like this with everybody in the country having a right to own guns at the age of maturity? Did I lose you? Okay, unfortunately, we must. Gentlemen, I don't know his audio or something. Pappy Tommy, let me see. More people die from guns than are saved from. Okay, and that's an interesting point. He suggested that more people die from guns than are saved from them. I'm going to say that I can't be on either side of that because there's no way to know. There's a lot of folks who are saved from injuries, saved from being robbed by brandishing a gun that never makes the news. Hell, I know. So it's hard to say if more folks are killed by guns than saved by guns because a lot of the saving you never hear about. Somebody come on your porch and you pull out a pistol and they decide to go the other way, you may have just saved your own life, and that may never make the news. So it's hard to say. Pappy Tommy, can you hear me?
Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm doing good. You been listening in?
I have, and I kind of differed a little bit on some of this stuff, but I think we're never going to be able to stop that type of atrocity from happening 100%. But where I think where we can start, my belief is every one of these types of incidences is a mental issue, okay? Because sane, normal, everyday of the mill people don't go around committing these atrocities. So now we can sit there. I was listening earlier to another live, and they're saying, well, you can't blame it on the mentally ill. You got to go further back. Sure, we can. We can go further. What made them mentally ill? Now, one guy said extremism. Okay, sure, I can go with that. That happens, of course.
Okay.
But I think where we need to start is the FDA. Look at
the Food and Drug Administration.
Absolutely, and hear me out here. Hear me out. Look at our foods we have here in America. I'm going to say one particular just because I know it. I just read about it recently. Mountain Dew. look at the ingredients on Mountain Dew in America and look at the ingredients in Mountain Dew in the UK. We have several foods here in America that are banned in other countries because of the stuff in them. Now, I'll show you where I'm going with this.
Please
all
do.
all these chemicals that they're putting into these foods, we are consuming hormones. What do you think that's doing to our bodies? Why do you think we're one of the most obese countries in the
Okay,
world?
let me stop you. I see in Defend 3747 put in the comments, you're not going to take my Mountain Dew and cookies. That's hilarious. let me
Hey,
just say
I
this.
hear it.
Let me just say this. I've worked with a lot of engineers and folks who, my background has been telecom engineering for years. I've worked with a lot of
Okay.
folks who needed to stay up all night long that drank Mountain Dews, and they didn't go out and murder people on the weekend. I mean, there's a large portion of America that eats unhealthy, and there's only a very small portion of America that commits mass casualty events.
Yes.
I don't know if I can connect those two. It should be a lot.
I don't.
If
Let
we,
me
if
let
we,
me let me
go
let
ahead.
me elaborate just a little bit. Okay.
Okay.
Everything that the body, for instance, I don't know what you're allergic to, but maybe you're allergic to gluten. I'm not. So what I mean by this, okay, is you have certain ingredients that may affect one person or their brain, and it's not going to affect me, or vice versa. Okay. Now,
Okay.
and the reason why I bring this up in the FDA, it's not just food. It's all the stuff, compound everything. You go to the doctor. What does the doctor want to do? He wants to give you medicine. They don't want to treat the problem anymore. They want to just band-aid it. Oh, go on your way, because they're collecting money. Now, where the FDA gets involved is, I don't care. I don't want to use the word I'm anti-government, but I am anti get the hell out of my. I'm get out of my life. Do you follow me?
I
Okay.
get it. I get it. Okay.
So, but I do believe there in some form of government is good. We need police. We need fire department. We need roads. There's the things that work, and that is technically a socialism part of the government, okay? Because we all collectively put into these things. Now, the FDA. Let me get back to that. Those people are getting money left and right from big pharma, from Pepsi Cola, from huge corporations. So the FDA will, okay, yeah, we'll take these ingredients, but those ingredients aren't good. And I think what's happening over time, because if you remember, I don't know what your age is, I don't even want to say, but I growing up in the 70s, people were not obese like they
Okay.
are today.
Let me
Was there
let me
obese?
interrupt.
Absolutely. Yeah, go ahead, please.
Let me interrupt and just ask you this. If
Sure.
let's say everything you're saying is true. I'm not going to
Uh-huh.
dispute it. Let's just say everything
Yeah,
you're
sure.
saying is true. Okay, so
Sure.
based on what you're saying, while this still exists, knowing that there are chemicals and things that can cause imbalances within humans being
Yes.
given to us as citizens, should we continue handing out guns to everybody while we know this is going on and has not been solved?
So that's a hard one, and I'll tell you, I am pro Second Amendment. But do I believe everybody on Earth should have a firearm? No, I think there are ill-willed people out there. My other half of me, now the I'm pissed off half of me, after the other day, I wanted to go on social media right away, and I was mad. I was in tears. I have a daughter myself. I'm 47 years old. I've been through a lot of shit in my life, but
Okay.
I think back, the stuff that I've been through, I never in my life would have thought of picking up a firearm and taking it to a school and killing a bunch of babies. So
Most Americans don't.
yeah,
I mean,
no, and I agree. 99.9% of us don't. Nobody
right,
thinks like
right.
that unless you got an imbalance in your head, something going on. Now, when I'm coming up with ideas here. I'm not saying that
Well,
anything to
and
do
I
with the
get that.
food has a problem.
Right. Let me interject. I get the fact that you're coming up with ideas, but this is where I have the issue from the liberal side of me is that I
Sure, sure.
believe I believe we're focusing on preserving the Second Amendment to the point where we're willing to sacrifice all kinds of other freedoms in preserving the Second Amendment. You got folks talking about sheriff substations next to schools. Every school is locked. Folks getting random pat downs and searches. You're talking about potentially looking at the ingredients. I mean, remember, if you have a right to own a gun, I have a right to eat fructose. So we're talking about
Absolutely.
maintaining the Second Amendment rights and potentially letting the government sacrifice all kinds of other rights because we're so focused on keeping our gun freedoms. We're losing a lot of freedoms because of these killings. I mean, whether it's going to the airport, how much longer it takes. Like you said, I'm in your age group. I'm in your age category, late 40s. When I used to fly in the 80s and 90s, you could get to an airport 10, 15 minutes before your flight and take off. Now you got to be there 2 hours. How much of that is lost freedom because you no longer have the freedom of mobility. You got to get searched. It's going to take you longer. And now we're going to start implementing that stuff in schools, supermarkets, movie theater. You're losing freedoms to maintain the Second
Oh yeah,
Amendment.
no,
You're
I
losing the
don't
Fourth
disagree.
Amendment.
I
Yeah,
don't
I'm just simply
disagree
saying.
with what you're saying. Yeah, I think that I mean, obviously the founders put the Second Amendment in there to preserve all the other amendments, the right to free speech, search and seizure, the Sixth Amendment. All these amendments, these are the reason why we have the Second Amendment is to secure that. Now, somebody earlier mentioned, well, if the government wants to take your gun, they're going to take it. Well, here's where I differ on that. Yeah, the almighty powerful government, but I don't know a single vet or active duty that's going to turn against their own family in the name of the government telling them to go take all their guns away. So
Okay,
where I'm getting at
I
with this
do.
is
I
the
do.
government's you do, yeah, okay, and I'm not
Yeah.
saying you don't. I wouldn't say anybody doesn't know that person, but I don't believe the overwhelming majority of military are going to go find their own family, and the government told you to take everybody's guns. See me?
You're
I mean, and I'm not saying it won't ever happen. I just don't think it would. That's my personal opinion. You know what I mean?
okay.
Um,
Here's what I don't. Let me stop you. Say this. Here's what I don't get.
sure, sure,
We understand.
sure.
We understand that if you take away the Second Amendment right, countries could revert back in time to say what happened during Hitler or Stalin or even Saddam Hussein. However,
Sure,
we
sure.
don't believe when we look back. Martin Luther King is a perfect example of someone who had Second Amendment rights. He applied for a gun, said his life was in danger, and they refused him. They didn't give a damn about his Second Amendment rights. So throughout
Of course.
America's history, folks like myself could not obtain a gun despite having Second Amendment rights. They were not going to honor it. We believe that if we get rid of our Second Amendment rights, the country could go back to a Hitler or something like that. But we don't believe, for some strange reason, the country could go back to the way it used to be, which is that I couldn't get a gun and a whole lot of other folks couldn't. I don't understand that. That's why I said I do.
Yeah, no, and I would never want it to go back to Jim Crow, pre-civil rights. I would never want that to happen. That's a terrible thing. And I don't know. No, I can't say I don't know. I know there are people out there that disagree, but that's a terrible thing. Um,
Well,
but to go,
my point is this: if you buy into the notion that our country could potentially go back to Hitler or a tyrannical government, you should also totally understand it could go back to Jim Crow because we never had a Hitler. We actually have had Jim Crow. So how could you possibly believe it could go back to Stalin or Hitler when they never existed here, but somehow Jim Crow is out of the works? If it can go back, it can go back. It doesn't matter.
oh no, I think definitely history can repeat itself. I'm a firm believer in that. I mean, I truly believe if we cut off all history, I think it's bound bound to repeat itself. I think that's proven time and time again. So we don't want to forget. We don't want to forget what happened, because again,
That's
we don't want
debatable.
those.
That's debatable.
Yeah, no,
That's
okay,
debatable.
fair enough. I understand what you're saying on that aspect of it, but let me get back to the FDA thing. The FDA controls the drugs from the big pharma, the food, what goes into, allows and says, yes, it's okay to put these foods in. But other developed countries don't allow the same chemicals to go into these foods. Even if it came from, let's say, an American food, Coca-Cola, I'm just throwing this out there.
Whoa. I gotta stop you. Other countries don't
Sure.
allow chemicals. Well, other countries don't allow their citizens to have guns either. We can't
You're 100%
use other
correct.
countries. We
No,
can't
you're
use
100%
other countries
correct.
unless you're going to take them as a whole.
You're 100% correct. But
Okay.
we are supposed to be the number one wealthiest superpower in the world, and the world looks at the United States because, let's face it, everything the United States does, like it or hate it, everybody else goes off. That's what, if we fall, our dollar falls, the rest of the world, it goes to shit. That's the way
That's
it
not
works.
totally. That I know we believe that, but that's not totally true. For instance, our healthcare system, nobody is patterning themselves after our healthcare system. So our Second Amendment rights, most countries are not. There's plenty of things we do in this country that other folks think is ridiculous and wrong. Our criminal justice system, none of the free world is patterning themselves after that. So the notion that everybody's following our lead because we're great in some areas, but definitely not in all.
Yeah, I truly don't believe there's a simple answer to any of this. But I do the one answer that keeps going over and over and over in my head is mental health, and we need to find out why when we were in school, you could look, in smaller rural towns for the most part. You can one of your buddies has a rifle in his back window of his pickup truck at school, and nobody ever batted an eye at it. Now, if you even, if you draw a picture of a rifle in school, they're reprimanding you. I mean, I don't know if they truly are, if that's a truth or not. I'm giving an example or
I understand. I get it.
It's you can't pick your nose without something going on these days. So that's why I come back to the whole food and drug, the FDA, because I along the line we went wrong somewhere, and with chemicals and the imbalancing and the drugs, and I think it's hurt society way worse than it's helped society. And I believe that if we kind of went back to basics to try to figure out which things are really hurting us the most, I think we're going to go back to food and drugs. I think that's what's doing it. Now, there's one other side note to that. I also believe my parents, I was raised with the iron fist, okay? I didn't get away with jack, let alone Jill. My father, I mean, once I got whooped at school, I got home, I got whooped again. Now, my generation, Generation X, we said we're not raising our kids the way we were raised. So we're raising them, oh, honey, it's okay. You got 112th place, but here's your blue ribbon. It's okay. You did great. And I think that is a problem.
Well, that's nothing new as far as I'm concerned. And I got to move the program on, so I'm gonna have to part ways with you. But I will say this in regards.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but in regards to what they call participation,
because that's what he's alluding to. You came in 123rd place, but as far as I'm concerned, the original participation trophies were Confederate statues. How could you lose a war and get statues everywhere? So I believe that's where it started. Somebody in the comments asked me, before I go to the next caller, somebody asked me, do I trust the government? And just being honest with you, if America was a country of small government or no government at all, my life would be worse. Unless I want to ignore all of our history. At the end of the day, without big government, I would be fucked. That is a historical fact. Now, I can ignore that and suggest that, well, in today's time, that wouldn't happen. There's no way to know. But if you simply look at the history of America, there is no denying that if we had a small states-oriented country or we let the citizens govern themselves, folks who look like me would be fucked. There's just no way to deny that. Okay, coming in with I'm a smart ass. We've talked before. Let me bring you on. Guns.
You at the Guns N' Roses concert? What does it say? We need more blacks, more Hispanics, and more women in political power. Depends on who you talk to. I'm a smart ass. Good afternoon or good evening, sir. How are you?
All right. How are you doing tonight?
I'm getting hammered. The liberal side of me is coming out. They beating my ass up in here. Are you going to continue that?
Well, no. I mean, I sit there. I don't know. I mean, I've been following you for a while now, and I see you more as a JFK era Democrat.
Okay, fair enough. I tend to be moderate. I do. If folks ask me all the time because I am so moderate, and I'm able to point out areas where I believe Trump was running the country better than Biden. So a lot of folks come in and say, "You sure you're a liberal?" Well, tonight you're kind of hearing the left side of me, and I can see in this audience they landed on me. But like I said, free speech. I love to hear it. What have you taken from what you've heard so far? Give me your spiel.
From what I've heard so far, I mean, there's so many different aspects you'd have to start at. You know, the guy that was on before was talking about the FDA. To touch on that real quick with the food thing, I had a friend of mine that got stationed in Japan. You know, and McDonald's is worldwide, and he was telling me he had me do a side by side, get on the internet side by side and look at the Big Mac. The Big Mac in the United States has something like 375 calories, something like that for one Big Mac. The exact same Big Mac made the same way, my buddy told me tastes the same, 168 calories. So
Okay.
how does, so he's, with him talking about the FDA and the preservatives and whatnot in the food, I could see possibly that, with the chemical balance and whatnot is a start. And then he also touched on the home. He was 100% correct. I'm 41, and the way I was raised is you didn't get in trouble because dad was going to get your ass, as opposed to today, I've got 4 kids. I go to touch one of them, all I got to do is go to school and say, my daddy hit me. And next thing I know, I'm in cuffs and getting hauled off.
Well, the problem with that is what you sometimes have what folks call government overkill. When we were coming up, our parents could beat our ass. The neighbors could beat our ass. I actually had my ass. I mean, I'm being 100% honest with you. In first grade, I pulled the fire alarm, and my mom came to school and beat my ass in front of the teacher. I've been spanked by my 2nd and 5th grade teacher. You can't do that nowadays because, unfortunately, in our time, there were some parents who overdid it and they killed their kids. So
Right.
they passed these blanket laws because some children were not just being disciplined properly; they were losing their lives. Real quick in the comments, somebody who was that Steven said, "You can't make enough laws to stamp out evil." Just in regards to your comments, sir, I would say if you can't make enough laws to stamp out evil, then why have a drug war? Why roll back Roe v. Wade and make it so that abortion is a crime? If laws are not going to stop people from doing it, then you should leave Roe v. Wade as it is. Because like you said, laws are not going to stamp out evil. Go ahead, I'm a smartass.
Well, with somebody saying that about the Roe, the Roe versus Wade has been touched on a few times. There was something I read that the reason why they're going back on Roe versus Wade is to counter the birth numbers from, the sad reproductive system problems that's been caused by this COVID-19 vaccination.
Maybe they need to have a constitutional amendment that says my reproductive rights shall not be infringed upon.
Something, but that's something, with running around the internet, that's something that I saw flying around, is that the reason why this came up is because of the reported reproductive system side effects that the numbers are gonna the numbers are gonna flop. Like birth numbers are gonna drop, which is gonna lower which in theory would lower abortions because people just aren't getting pregnant. So
I
that's why.
have heard what you're talking about. That is absolutely the great replacement theory is something I talked about on one of my previous shows. And yeah, that was cited as a reason for why that they're talking about making it harder to abort is to get up the numbers because apparently most abortions are from Caucasian women. And if you prevent them from aborting, then you're going to have more. Now, it could be a conspiracy. I'm not saying I subscribe to it. I'm just saying that is something that was ran by me when I had a show. You see the name in the background. That is the title from that show I had. So,
Right.
yeah, and that's what some folks were saying. So, it is what it is.
Right. Well, being white, we are. I mean, it's the how can I say this? With racial mixing becoming more socially acceptable,
No shit. That's the bomb.
the how can I say it? I'm just gonna say it, and if people get butthurt, oh fucking well.
Put it this way. Let me stop. I don't want you to get censored. Hey, free speech. You can say whatever the hell you want.
Right. I can't say nothing crazy like that.
Or whatever. Go ahead.
It's the Northern European, because Northern European is more or less where white people came from.
Okay.
Okay. So I'm going to say people of Northern European descent, their percentages are going there. It's been going on for a while. Their percentages are getting smaller with the social, with it being socially acceptable now of interracial relationships and children and so on and so forth, as opposed to back in the 50s and 60s, it was a very taboo thing. So that with the white people disappearing, yes, the percentage of being Northern European is lowering, is getting thin. It's starting to thin out with that. So
might that have something to do with the former commander in chief saying, why can't we have people come in from those countries?
I haven't heard him say that, but it's a possibility. I mean, there's things being thrown around that Trump's racist. People say Biden's racist. It's really, really hard to say. But tonight's topic is about the school shooting. We got kind of sidetracked anyway.
Right.
But I've seen some people in the comments and whatnot, and in other lives and so on and so forth, saying, that with the soldiers, that aren't active duty anymore. That's a free solution. We
discussed that last night on the broadcast about soldiers, and I had a couple veterans on, and one of the veterans suggested that he would love to do it. And he started talking, and he stated that he's been through some shit. He's been covered in blood and all of that. And he talked about he does have PTSD. And I asked him, I said, so are you on any meds for PTSD? Because some of the things we're suggesting that causes some of these children to act certain ways of their own depressants, their own anti-anxiety medications, and like you're talking about in the food, things that cause chemical imbalances. Well, PTSD is a chemical imbalance too. And I asked him, I said, well, do you take meds for your PTSD? And he said, no. And he owned firearms. And I told him, I said, so you're essentially saying you have PTSD and it's untreated. He's like, yeah, it's under control and things like that. And he started talking about certain things that trigger him from PTSD. Now, he was suggesting that he would love to take the volunteer school protection position you're talking about. So I guess the question I'm trying to present is, do you want folks bringing in potential combat complications that are going on with them mentally and putting them in the school and guarding the school? I mean, is it possible that things could go wrong from that as well? What if a student decides with a combat trained security personnel, and it triggers something in that guy and he takes off on a student? I mean, there's additional problems that could happen. Keep in mind, mass casualty events at schools is very rare. The stuff like students fighting with adults, and all of that stuff happens a lot more common. So I don't want to necessarily trade one problem for the other one.
Right. Well, I just seen a thing the other day that at Disneyland, damn Tigger was chasing a kid for pulling his tail. So just so I mean, to kind of throw that out, I mean, but you have things like that. Now, me, I'm a vet, and I will tell you that the way I was trained was to never harm children. So to say that, to say, that our veterans with PTSD, it's simple. Everybody's calling for background checks. So it's very simple. I know numerous veterans, including myself, that would pay to have a background check, whatever, obviously they'd have to, our government would have to go to the drawing table and figure out what markers they want to use as flagging points in our background check. But if we clear our background check, then why not? We're free, we're trained, and it's the simple thing of like a shepherd, with a field of sheep. Okay.
Well, I'm not. Like I mentioned yesterday during the broadcast, when you look at the racist shooting in Buffalo, New York, there was an armed retired cop on the scene, and that guy was still able to implement the chaos. He just shot the cop. The assailant showed up in body armor. If you show up in body armor with a AR-15 and AK-47 or something with some high capacity weapon with a lot of extra rounds, you're going to outgun whoever is there working. And you also have the element of surprise because the security personnel that is there working to protect the schools, you are going to be the first person to announce that there's a gunfight, not him. So he's lost the element of surprise, probably is going to lose the tactical advantage in the process, and he certainly, in a lot of cases, will be outgunned as the assailant often may have an AR, may have some other type of long rifle, and now they're wearing body armor. So I guess the only point I'm trying to make is even if you do this, there's no certainty that it actually will work. Because Buffalo, New York is a perfect example where you had an armed guy on the scene and he just lost his life.
Right. Did you hear about the mass shooting that happened in Richland, Washington at the Fred Meyer?
What happened?
About 2.5 months ago. There was a man that walked into the Fred Meyer and shot and killed 6 people with no provocation. Just walked in and shot the place up. So, I mean...
And that's what I'm just simply saying. If we maintain Second Amendment rights on the guise of they shall not be infringed upon, so we're going to leave our Second Amendment rights the exact same way they were when the Constitution was adopted and that amendment was added. Is there any way to stop this with leaving the rules that way?
Yes, there is. I mean, if you don't infringe on our Second Amendment rights, like I was making reference to with the shepherd. If you leave a field of sheep without the shepherd, the wolf's going to come get them. But if you have the shepherd,
so how are you going to? Okay, but how are you going to stop mass casualty events if everyone maintains their gun rights the way they are? You're talking about things in the food, discipline, and stuff like that? Until that is solved, do you keep handing out guns?
Well, I would do background checks. I mean, I do. I mean, they do background checks now, but I agree with background checks. I 100% agree with those. So if you did your
background check, the assailant in Texas yesterday would have passed the background check. He didn't have anything criminal in his history. He would have passed the background check.
Right. Well, I mean, it's a flawed system. I will agree with you. It's a flawed system. Nothing's perfect. But to take away something, criminals are called criminals for a reason. If criminals were law-abiding citizens,
we wouldn't be criminal. He hadn't committed any crime until he went there and started shooting people. He was not a criminal either.
Well, what's the background on him? I mean, I really haven't seen too much on the background of him besides the fact that he was 18 years old. Other than that,
he was just a sweet kid that decided today I'm going to start taking lives. That's what it looks like. Living with his grandma, just like he dropped out of high school, but he didn't have any problems with the law or anything. He bought 2 ARs. He clearly had whatever background check he had to go through or whatever. In Texas, I don't think they do anything to you in Texas. They just hand out guns, apparently. I mean, he had just turned 18 and was able to buy 2 AR-15s within days of turning 18. So it doesn't sound like they do anything to you in Texas. They just hand you a gun. As long as you don't have a criminal record, here you go.
Right. Well, he might have been a freak case, but to speak generally speaking, if you put good guys with guns, the saying goes, good guys with guns stop bad guys with guns. Now, of course,
Sometimes.
that's not. Well, sometimes.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, look at what we've had happen since 9/11. Now we have armed, from my understanding, we have armed marshals on every flight. Have we had any airplanes hijacked lately? So the deterrence there. Okay, that's what I'm kind of getting at is there's no deterrent. So if somebody's dead set and they wake up in the morning, look in the mirror and say, today's the day I'm going to do this, and there's nothing that's going to stop me. There's always those possibilities. But
okay. So you're in the same camp as I am then, that as long as there is Second Amendment rights, this will be part of the American way of life.
Well, but we don't have deterrence. That's the thing. So put deterrence in place.
Can we afford all of the deterrence needed to stop mass casualty events? You can be a victim of a mass casualty event in school, at recess, on the walk home, at the corner store, how many deterrents do you have?
Well, but how many of us are armed? How many can freely carry?
Most Americans already are armed and can freely carry, and it's still happening.
There's some states with really strict laws that have higher gun crime rates.
There is very few states in America that you cannot carry a gun. I mean, even in California and Chicago, there's a few extra hurdles, but I got relatives in Chicago that have firearms. It's not that right. Even in those liberal states, if you want a firearm, it's not. It may take you a few extra months to get one, but you can carry a firearm. I would say 99% of American counties in this country, you can carry a firearm. It's not that. It's nowhere near as difficult as some on the right suggests, because they're going at the liberal cities or whatever. But for the most part, if you want to carry a firearm in the country, you can carry something to protect yourself. You may not be able to carry a bazooka, but you can carry something to defend yourself using gunpowder in essentially just about any county in the country you go to.
Right. It's hard to say. I mean, without more deterrence in place, and then you said something about how many deterrents do you need? Well, putting a simple one in place at the schools and other buildings, that are gun-free zones, like I said, there's no deterrent in place. So until the deterrents get put in place, i.e. somebody armed and obviously not uniformed, if you're wearing a uniform with a shiny thing on your chest, obviously, bad guy knows that guy's the guy I got to take out. If you have plain dressed people, that are walking the grounds of the school, or even somebody that looks like a damn janitor, that you're undercover, then who's gonna know?
So to me, it almost sounds like you're turning into a militarized zone. I mean, where there literally has to be an armed guard everywhere you go on the country. Everywhere you go, there needs to be somebody armed near you.
Well, with schools, the school thing kind of hits because I have a 7-year-old.
What about movie theaters? We've had shootings there.
There was one. We've only had the one big one.
There's so many of them. There's so many of them that we're calling them big ones now.
Right. Well, there's. The only one that comes to mind is the Batman one. That's the only one that's coming to mind right now. Is the Batman theater incident. That's the only one. That's the only one that I've got. If there's more, I'll look them up later. But like I said, that's the one that just stuck out the most. But
every supermarket, every Walgreens, every CVS, an armed guard, huh?
Well, it's in some places they do that. I'm originally from Southern California. You go to an In-N-Out on a Friday night and a Saturday night, there's armed security walking around. You go to Taco Bell on a Friday, Saturday night, there's armed security. So with that, there are some places where those measures are being taken. Now, granted, on select nights of the week, but they are being taken.
There is just not enough personnel to do this to every public business out there. It's just
No,
we don't have enough manpower and money to spend to do this.
Well, I don't know. We found $40 billion to send to the Ukraine, but we could have found $5 billion for a wall. I mean, I don't.
You guys ain't gonna let that Ukraine shit go for now. Look, let me move it on. I got somebody else wanting to get on. I think you're about the fifth person tonight to bring up the money we get. Y'all hate the Ukraine, boy. Shout out to Zelensky. His poor ass is just taking it. But look, nice having you on, man.
Yeah, have a good night, man.
All right, you too. Every time something need money from now on, it's gonna be, well, what about the Ukraine? Lyle, I'm gonna bring you on. Calm during Trump. Jerry Springer business. Oh, wow, Jerry Springer show. It was kind of interesting with Jerry Springer, with Trump in there. He definitely liked the name calling and stuff. Lyle, good evening. What's up?
Good evening.
How are you? What's going on tonight?
Good. How are you? Let's talk about guns in school. I do believe that every school should have a metal detector. We do have
a lot of them do already. A lot of them already do.
Yeah. Not every single school. My school doesn't, and my
hang on one second. Hold on one second. Rep 8319 in the comments. You know, it would just be easier if every single comment you type said, "I hate Democrats." Because that's all you're doing is you typing all kinds of stuff that's unrelated to the topic that is anti-liberal. I get it. You don't like liberals. I understand my audience is MAGA. That's fine. But I like folks who bring their A game to the conversation. Every single comment you put in here is just an "I hate Democrat" phrased it a different way. Just type "I hate Democrats." That would make it easier. Go ahead, Lyle.
Yeah. I was talking about the metal detector. Yeah. So I do think that we should have metal detector in school and movie theaters. Usually,
do you know how long it would take for students? Do you realize how long it would take for students to get in class if every student had? I mean, and some schools do this, but
I mean,
how many things do we carry on us that are metal? Your backpack, your shoes, your belts. I mean, if you got all of the students, thousands of students for some schools going through metal detectors, how long does it take? How early do they have to get there in the morning?
Yeah. So, easy fix to do that is to let kids only take leave their backpack in school, and the only thing they can bring home, it could be their laptop. You know, if their school provides out like a school computer, if they provide that. But mostly, every single student is coming in with either just their iPad or laptop, and their backpack is remaining on their lockers. And like I said, metal detector does not take that long. I went to a basketball game and it took me like 10 seconds. I only had my keys, my phone, my wallet. I took it down, went through it. It didn't take that long. The lines, yes.
But what you're suggesting, this is what I keep bringing up to you and other callers, is that in defense of the Second Amendment and gun freedoms, you're starting to take away other freedoms. Now I can't even take my backpack home. That is a loss of a freedom. You're taking freedoms away to preserve the Second Amendment. And that's what I keep asking is getting searched at the metal detector, for instance, that is a Fourth Amendment violation, which protects you against unwarranted searches and seizures. You're taking away other freedoms to protect this one amendment. If you are for freedom, you should be for all of the amendments. But we're favoring the Second Amendment over all the other ones. So we're constantly chopping away at all these other freedoms and amendments to the point where we got, like you said, sheriffs, some people were talking about, you got armed guards. All of our freedoms are going away just so folks can say, but I still have a gun.
Okay, I'll say in terms of backpack, it's just you gotta limit your backpack. You might have to leave your books in at the locker, and just the only things that you can have in your backpack would be like maybe a book or an iPad or whatever school that you use. It has to be very limited. You can't have a bunch of
Yeah,
things in your backpack, so you can pass through the metal detector, and
yeah,
then
limited.
yeah,
What you start talking about, you have to have limited stuff in your backpack and all of this, so you can. That sounds like you can only have five. You can only have 7 rounds in your magazine. It has to be limited. You're taking away freedoms, is what I'm trying to say to you. You talking about limitations, and just like some people say, well, you should be able to have a gun when you go hunt, but you got to leave it at the office. You can't bring it. You're doing that with backpacks. You're taking away people's freedoms. I mean, no matter how you look at it, you're limiting freedoms. You're limiting how much stuff they can have in a backpack. You're limiting if they can even take it home or not. You're taking
their freedom. It's just the time period, of maybe school can get pushed back, uh, but that is a huge safety measure, and like you don't want a school shooter walking through your school doors, and end up shooting up whatever how many
Let me
thousand.
let me say this in regards to you don't want you got a metal detector. You don't want school shooters walking in. Just like folks believe that if you ban guns, a criminal will always be able to get his hands on a gun. Use that same logic to metal detectors because folks say that even if you ban guns it won't matter because criminals don't follow laws. If you got a metal detector and someone wants to take out classmates, you think they're going to walk through a metal detector and let you? They're going to come in firing. That metal detector is not going to mean anything. In fact, everybody that's standing around that metal detector is probably going to be the first to get it. If you don't believe criminals follow rules, keep that in mind when you talk about the metal detector that's standing there. They're not going to just go through that thing peacefully.
Yeah, yeah.
That's probably where they're going to start their attack at.
A good example with my school, we do have a metal detector, and in order for you to get in, you have to get buzzed in. Of course, in the beginning, I think our school started at 8:30 a.m. So if you're, all the doors are open at 8:30 a.m. and we do have officers in there. We actually do have we had 2 officers, and they're constantly watching and passing through the metal detectors and all that. Uh, and after 8:30, whoever comes in has to get buzzed in. So we do have cameras everywhere, inside and outside of school. And when if the metal detectors go off, the police department already, know about this, and they'll send someone there to investigate and then maybe call for backup if things went bad. But we actually never had a mass shooting besides we had one in 2013, but after that we never had one.
Okay, fair. Let me respond to somebody in the comments. Bright said they banned guns in the UK, then knives started killing everybody.
Yeah.
If that's the case, if they banned guns in some of these countries and it made no difference, or it made the citizens feel less safe, keep in mind the UK is a democracy just like the United States is. They vote laws and politicians in. If the citizens in that country banned guns and folks started being stabbed to death and it didn't do any difference to the death rate, they have a right to bring back guns, and they're not doing it. So clearly something about the citizens in that country makes it's pretty clear that they feel better, at least the majority of them do, with the banning of guns. They could bring back gun rights in that country at any given time. All they have to do is vote the same way we do. Go ahead, Lyle.
Also, China, I believe there was a mass whatever killer. Like he stabbed over 30 people with a knife. That's pretty impressive.
And
I'll give.
rare. And rare.
Yeah, like how I don't know how he's able to kill 30 something with the knife, but China they have very strict gun laws, and people switch to knife and other
Well, Okay, I do want to move the program on, but I'll give you the last word. Let me just say this in regards, and I said this last night, because anytime you talk about any type of gun limitations, it's inevitable that somebody's going to bring up, if you switch from guns, folks are going to find something else. That has some truth to it. However, I'll say the same thing I always say. If a criminal, an assailant, or a would-be killer has to switch to something else, one thing he is not going to find, and that is often the success rate. You think about any of these mass killing events. Let's take we were talking about the one that happened at the movie theater, what the last caller was talking about at the Batman theater. He walked in the movie theater and shot up a bunch of people. You look at what happened in Texas yesterday. Take the gun out of that guy's hand and put a knife in his hand. Yeah, you still can get people, but the success rate and even the death rate will probably be less. I mean, ask any trauma surgeon. Getting shot with a gun is typically far more damaging to the human body and human tissue than getting stabbed, unless you're being stabbed by somebody who really knows their way around a blade. But if you just take the average citizen with a gun in his hand versus the average citizen with a knife in his hand, that average citizen with a gun is almost always far more lethal. So yeah, you could take guns and let them replace them with something else, and the end result is probably going to be a lot of victims surviving the attack, just because the knife is not as effective in killing. There's a reason why people keep choosing guns to kill. They work better. They're more effective. I'll let you get the last word, Lau. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'll say with the knife, it really depends on like weight exactly there, and there's sometimes no cops in there, so like you can get away with killing 20 plus people if you have a knife with you. And another thing I just want to say that it's not only about mental health. I think bullying it's another issue that that's happening in school, and I've been bullied myself, and yes, it has. One day I thought maybe I would have, maybe if I grab my grandparents pistol, I could, stand up with them. But I'm glad I never, took the action. But I think bullying is one of the biggest issues that middle school, high school, whatever they're facing in those school. And I don't know if every school try to address it, but I think we need to also address that besides mental health.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. Fair enough. All right. Well, appreciate you coming through. Let me move it along, man. So come on back through anytime.
God bless.
All right. You too. We
always get it down. By the way, folks, I need 10,000 likes. Y'all can make that shit happen. Tap your screen. There's almost 300 of us up in here. Tap your screen. Show your boys some love. Doesn't cost you nothing. You know my spiel. I give it every broadcast. I need 10,000 likes. Make that happen. Going on to the next Dunk-a-Dunk. And Modern Colin, as I do see you in the dunk.
Okay, let's see what's going on with a name like Dunk-a-Dunk. Are you making Bitcoin? What the hell did that say? Are you making Bitcoin in the background? You keep buffering. I don't know what the hell sometimes happens with the internet connection. Dunk-a-Dunk, can you hear me?
Yeah, hey, host, how you doing?
I'm doing good. What's on your mind this evening?
Yeah, I want to talk about the First Amendment and freedom of speech, actually. Mainly about misinformation and actually internet speech in general.
Okay.
We saw so much misinformation, and there's this whole debate over censorship with Twitter and freedom of speech, and people should be allowed to say whatever you want. And the thing is, on the internet, when everyone is so accessible to the internet and they can go out there and say whatever they want and spread any kind of misinformation, there's no real way to police that. And it creates all of these echo chambers, or people posing death threats to anyone that they don't like. And people in groups can go into forums like 4chan and just like propagate ideas that can lead and drive someone to like go think to the depths that, oh, hey, if I take this gun and I go out and shoot some people, like in Buffalo, and some people would do it because they just want to urge him on, and some people will say something just to make him, be entertained or whatever. These are real issues that you don't really see talked a lot on anywhere.
Yeah.
And it feels like in the case of Buffalo, when you go outside and live stream something like what happened, and in case of Uvalde, I really don't think like this is some guy who just had a thought one day and intended to go to a school and shoot some kids. This is some guy who's been urged on by some kind of community.
Yeah, but okay, so let's take what you're saying. Okay, let's say what you're saying is true. Do we continue handing out guns, knowing that these problems exist, knowing that anybody can be radicalized on an internet site, or some of the other folks said we got a huge mental health issue in this country until those problems are addressed? We all know those problems exist. Even folks who are staunch supporters of the Second Amendment will admit we have a huge mental health problem in this country. We have problems with being radicalized online. Some folks pointed out we have problems in the food and things. Do you continue handing out guns knowing those problems exist? And before they are solved, do you still just keep handing out guns throughout the problem?
So I don't know how to answer that, because I think for guns thing, it's like either everyone has it or nobody has it. Because as long as my neighbor can get it and he can be as responsible as he wants, if one day he snaps and he goes outside and no one can do anything about it. I mean, I was really against gun rights previously. And with the recent uptick in all of these shootings, I really want to go outside and get a gun so that I can at least protect myself and my family. And I can't imagine just being so vulnerable when it's possible that anyone on the street can have a weapon.
Well, one of the things I will say is that all of the problems we're pointing to, remember, if we're trying to defend the Second Amendment, we're pointing to everything else as the problem and saying that the Second Amendment has nothing to do with what's going on. The problem, though, is that all of the other things we're pointing to, they exist in all of the free world. Depression, even our diet. America does not have a patent on obesity. Folks in the UK, folks in Australia, their obesity is happening in a lot of other countries. Bullying is happening in a lot of other countries. They have access to the internet to become radicalized in a lot of other countries. Yet they do not have mass killings by firearms in these other countries. What is making America so different? That they have all of those other same issues, but they do not have the mass killing by firearm problem.
America has a very long history of one homogenous group being, I don't want to make this a race issue, but this is something intrinsic. It's class society, and it's a society where there's just a huge melting pot of different cultures, right? And each culture has their own input on what's best for them. You have the majority white people who wants to protect, their freedom of speech, their freedom of their 2A, and that they've had until now. We have all of these minority groups that's trying to even the level field with BLM or every kind of minority group fighting for their own rights. And in all of these cases, there's going to be conflicts that rise up. And when these conflicts show up in the real world, people are going to have conflicts.
Okay. All right. Fair enough. All right. I don't totally disagree with that. I do believe that because America is so diverse, I kind of have said the same thing you said before, that there's going to be a lot of different opinions, a lot of conflicting viewpoints, and that can lead to violence. So I do get your point, but I'm gonna go ahead and move it on. I'll let you wrap it up. I'll give you one more. Go ahead.
That's basically all I needed to say. I just want to say thank you, host, for having this platform, and it's a really good conversation that you're having, and I appreciate you.
Hey, I appreciate you coming on by. You're welcome back anytime. Definitely, always a good talk. Come on back anytime, man.
All right, have a good night.
You too. Okay, who else do we have? Modern Color, Sinister One. I see you. And let me read a couple comments. Hang on, Modern. Send me an invite to go live. That's kind of not how it works independent. You send me the invite and I accept it. If you are able to send the invite, go ahead and put it in there and I will put you on independent. Like I said, folks, the whole goal here is not to get you to see things my way. I'm damn sure not always going to see things your way. The entire purpose of this is to let you get your spiel. I like to be able to reach across the aisle. I make no qualms about who I am. You see what my name is, and I definitely prefer talking to MAGA. That's my preferred audience. Do talk to liberals as well. No problem with that at all. But I don't like to be in an echo chamber. Otherwise, I would call this the liberal hour. I prefer talking to the right oftentimes because we get things going. But I give everybody a chance to speak. So make no mistake about it. If you send the invite, I see it in there. We still got time. I will put you on. As long as you don't go crazy, you get to speak. Modern Colonizer, what's going on tonight?
Good evening, brother. I'm all right. How are you today?
I'm still looking at what took place yesterday and wondering, is there any way in hell we can do anything about this that could at least limit the chances of it happening more frequently in the future?
I think so. And I mean, I think a lot of we, myself included, get hung up on this dichotomous thinking of it's either yes or no or black or white or it's this or that. It's one answer. One thing will solve this, right? I don't think there's any one thing. I think there's definitely an issue with, and I have this myself. Every single generation, we get a little bit less capable of dealing with adversity. We don't let kids lose. We don't let them fall off the merry-go-round. We don't let them get hurt. And the first time they get to face adversity is when they're so old that the consequences are grave, you know? And I mean, like I'm driving in my car today and I'm losing my mind at some stuff, right? And I'm just like, man, my dad wouldn't have lost his mind over this. He just kept on trucking. You know what I mean? And it's every single, we get worse at it. And so what happens when we don't let somebody lose until they're of age? How do they solve their problems? They don't know how to solve their problems, you know?
Fair enough. I mean, we have certainly softened our children in this country. I do agree with that. I don't know if me treating you with kid gloves throughout your adolescence should make you want to go out and shoot people, but I do get your point that we have softened our kids, you know, whereas when we came up, you drank water out of the fire hose, you went out and played till dark, and you roamed around the neighborhood. Nobody even knew where the hell you were. So we definitely had a lot more freedom and independence, ate dirt, did all of that shit. I mean, I would sit on top of an anthill and let them bite the shit out of me. Nobody, it was just what we did. We were far tougher back then. But I don't know if treating your kids with kid gloves, so to speak, is leading to folks going to school and dismissing all of their classmates from class permanently. I don't know if I would say it should go that far.
Well, again, it's not the blanket solution. I just think it's a large part of it. You know, I'm pro-choice, and when you talked about shall not be infringed, was that you that said, you know, we should include do not infringe on pro-choice thing, right? And
yeah, women's reproductive rights shall not be infringed upon. That's what I was saying.
Right. And even though I'm pro-choice, it hit a nerve with me where you've heard me before, you have to be against it if it's wrong, even when it benefits you. So people only understand the word infringe when it matters to their prerogatives. Yeah. You know what I mean?
I agree with that. Let me say this, and this is kind of somewhat off topic and somewhat on. I do agree that people only understand things when it applies to them. And what I'm saying is that the same folks who believe that if you ban guns, a criminal will always still be able to get their hands on a gun, do not look at drugs the same way. The argument is, well, guns don't kill people. People using guns irresponsibly kills people. Then why would you be in favor of the drug war? A bag of schmack, a bag of cocaine will never jump off the table and cause an overdose. It's only when people use it irresponsible. Drugs don't kill people. People using drugs irresponsibly kills people. I said it before earlier, is that most of us have enough drugs in our medicine cabinet to easily wipe ourselves out. But because you use them responsibly, you live a normal life. Drugs are only dangerous when you use them irresponsible. So if you're going to look at guns that way, based on that argument, you would suggest also that then drugs should be legal. Yeah, drugs are lethal, but as long as you don't use them irresponsible, you'll be fine. All drugs should be legal based on the arguments you hear from gun owners.
You know my stance. I've said the drugs won the war on drugs. Make them legal because you are since the beginning of time, drugs or some form of adulterant substance has been a part of our culture. Changing our mind about how we feel about the day. You know what I mean? People are absolutely going to get them. And it's the same with guns. And what I always resort to is the only things humans have ever really gotten good at is killing each other. I mean, moon, that was cool. There wasn't much up there. We stopped going, but what have we really set our money and our mind to? How do we kill each other better? And let
me ask you that now. And I'll ask you that. That's a good point. I guess I'll ask the audience, for those who are listening in as well. Yay or nay? Yay means yes, they would have. Nay means no, they would not. If the founding father, here's my question. I want you to type, for you guys watching, yay or nay. Yes, they would have mean yay. No, they would not have. Nay, N-A-Y. If the founding fathers had known, and this is in regards to what modern colonizers are saying of how we've gotten much better at killing ourselves. If the founding fathers had known how far firearm technology would develop, remember when they passed the Second Amendment, they had known citizens would be able to fire hundreds of rounds a minute. Do you believe they still would have passed the Second Amendment in the same way it is now? Or do you believe they would have somehow made some type of change or some type of alteration to it so that folks could not get Gatling guns and all kinds of crazy shit? Yay or nay? Do you think that? What do you think about that, modern colonizer?
Absolutely. The Second Amendment was not written due to firearms. It was written to how do we stop these people who, remember, America was the first country founded on the principle that we allow the government to exist. From before all time, the government permitted the people to exist, and that's why we fought that war. And so it doesn't matter if there was not firearms. Their rules would have been, if the government has a 32-inch long sword, the people have a 32-inch long sword. That's you know.
Good point. So let me ask you a question then. Based on that premise, the citizens should have access to biological and atomic weapons then, right? Because the government has it. Our weaponry has developed all the way to the point of biological and atomic weapons. If you want to truly stave off tyranny and have the same weaponry as the government, it would not stop just at handguns and firearms, right?
I would argue that is definitely not something the founding fathers could have foreseen as weapons of mass destruction. And I would also argue, even though the two words aren't in the Constitution like this, but they're human rights violations, weapons of mass destruction.
But we have them. We've had them for a very long time.
I know. What I'm getting at, though, I think if they were to have that time machine, they would go, we need to put something in the Constitution that stops us from having weapons of mass destruction, because they're never used against military assets. They're used against people. And that you know what I mean? So it's hard to get into their heads about that. Now, what I would say is, if we
can't never use military assets, because for the most part, most countries around the world haven't used it. I mean, we used atomic weapons in World War II, but for the most part, most countries have just kept their arsenal without using it. So there's really no way to know if they can be used against military assets or not. But they're certainly designed to be used that way. They
Right.
certainly have the propensity for that to happen. I'm just simply saying, if you're going to buy into the argument that the founding fathers wanted us to have weapons to stave off tyranny and be able to fight back with the government, why would it stop at firearms? Like somebody said in the comments, I want a tank right now. What would stop a wealthy person from Elon Musk, suggesting that I want a fully armed F-22? I mean, I can afford it. If you can afford a fully armed F-22, or you want to buy a MiG from Russia, fully armed. Why shouldn't you be able to have it?
As a libertarian, I think you should be able to have that. I don't know if you should be able to have germ warfare, biological weapons.
And and let me make it clear. I understand how ridiculous this sounds. I'm not saying that this sounds sane, but at the same time, to us liberals, someone suggested that they should be able to have a belt-fed 50 cal in their Manhattan apartment that only has drywall on the wall sounds just as ridiculous to us liberals. But I'm just simply saying that if you're going to stave off tyranny, there should be no weapon that the government has that you should not be able to have. Because if they become tyrannical, I mean, keep in mind, you mentioned human rights violations and things like that with ricin and anthrax and things. Becomes tyrannical. Looking at the history around the world of tyrannical governments, you can expect that they will use chemical weapons and things like that on you. That's what tyrannical governments do.
Right. So what I'll do is I'll go back to the Second Amendment, and we have to look at exactly the punctuation of it. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed is Part A. A well-regulated militia necessary. Okay. If I know it word for word, I'm tired today. A well-regulated militia necessary to the security of a free state. Anyways, think of that as Part B. The National Guard is supposed to be our well-regulated militia. But real quick, so Heller already decided that first part of the Second Amendment means I get to keep and bear a firearm. The second part of the Second Amendment is think of that as our National Guard. And that's been a little bit too federalized. So I would argue that the National Guard, very well regulated, should have some kind of a deterrent, whether it's nuclear weapons. I think we've already Geneva banned. We still have them. We know we have chemical warfare stockpiles, but we're not supposed to use them, right? But the National Guard should be less federalized, and it should, just because they're activated by the governor doesn't mean that the governor has complete full control over them. You know what I mean? It's pretty federalized. But the National
very much so.
The National Guard is our militia, our well-regulated militia, and they should have exactly what the full active duty military has.
So I'm just simply saying and this is the reason why I asked you folks if the founding fathers would have done things this way. I'm just simply suggesting that based on what you can get access to as a citizen, you're not in a position to stop tyranny. If they really wanted to go, what is the leader of Syria, Assad or whatever his name is? If the United States government really wanted to become tyrannical and they started using mustard gas or anthrax from the air, nothing you have on your closet shelf would save you. Period. Nothing. So the idea that you somehow, by having guns, you're protected against tyranny, you're not even properly armed. They can take you out from a distance. You're not even properly armed to save yourself against tyranny. Only way that you can prevent tyranny is if it's Red Dawn style, where the tyrannical element comes right up in your face and you get to be involved in a guerrilla warfare. But our technology has advanced us beyond that. They don't have to come house to house. They can take you out from the air the same way we did a lot of countries when we go to war. A lot of shit is already solved. Make no mistake about it. With all of the troops we lost in Iraq, the only reason that happened is because we were trying to do surgical strikes. If we just said F you Iraq, it would have been over with in a day. It was
Yeah.
because we were trying to take out specific laser pinpoint targets and spare mosques, not harm citizens, and not tear down the infrastructure. If we did to Iraq what Russia is trying to do to the Ukraine, that shit would have been over with overnight. It would have. I mean, there's nothing in plenty of folks in Iraq are armed. Their armament, their arms would have been useless. Just a little bit of chemical weapons here or there, or the or all the stuff you got, all the ammo you've been saving, that stuff would be useless. You'd be dead and it'd be laying around the house. I don't understand it. I don't understand the idea that folks think in modern times that they're somehow armed enough that they can protect themselves against tyranny. If you really want to talk about tyranny, Stalin, Hitler, Saddam Hussein, Slobodan Milosevic, the way that they implemented tyranny, you don't have enough shit on you to stop that. You're just not going to be able to do anything about that. I'll give you the last word, though. Go ahead.
So, I agree with what you said. However, I'll put it this way. Even with everything that's been going on, I've decided I'm still too cute for prison. I'm not going to take arms. But you use weapons of mass destruction against my people, that gives me all of the wherewithal to go and do so. And I'll just remind everybody, we've been getting our ass handed to us by guys in pajamas for 50 years now. So, I mean, guerrilla warfare has been whooping our ass. Okay, so there's that. And then what I'll just follow up and last word.
Guys in pajamas? I gotta ask, who are the guys in pajamas? That I'm not getting that synonym. That's above my head. Explain to me, who are the guys in pajamas?
Yeah, the Viet Cong, the insurgents in Iraq.
All right.
Okay. Ununiformed.
All right.
Who blend in with society, you know.
Okay. Fair enough.
But what I will say is, just to finish up with this, is just that I think what everybody needs to take away from this is, even before firearms, all we really dedicated our mind and money to was killing each other. It's not the firearm. It's people just suck. Okay. So that's just all there is to it.
Okay. Fair enough. All right, man. You made your point. All right. You have a good one. Catch you later. All right. He is going to explain how to defend oneself against tyranny. At least that's what I'm interpreting. Cinerstorm, talk to me.
So kind of, you were talking about how we could fight tyranny and that. So our military doesn't work for politicians. They work for us. So if our military is asked to attack its own people, they don't have to accept that term. They're not going to fight against themselves, their brothers, their sisters, their cousins, their uncles. They're not going to attack against themselves.
You need to tell that to the QAnon folks, because they certainly had bought into the notion that Trump was going to use the military to fight against the country. So the QAnon folks need to hear what you're talking about.
Well, I'm not a QAnon folk, so I'm in the middle of the road. And I just know facts as an ex-military man myself. We're not going to attack our own people. And politicians don't control the military.
I'm going to say yes and no, because I do understand your notion that the military will not attack our own folks. But
correct.
It's
against the rules, actually.
Yeah, but I'm gonna agree with Lesser Supreme in saying that you don't know that. You don't know what's on a person's mind. And what I mean by that is, when Trump wanted to use the National Guard to stop the riots and looting in Black Lives Matter, I would assume that he would have found a lot of National Guard willing to do whatever he suggested doing. And those are against other American citizens. I do believe if you can present a decent cause, you can find military personnel that will act against other Americans. There's no way I'm gonna believe. I mean, when you look at the history of this country, look at what happened to folks who look like me during certain protests. They were using the military to tear us apart. So we have a historical precedent of it actually happening already. So the notion that it couldn't happen again, I don't know. I can't imagine.
We don't have a historical notion of military firing on American citizens.
If you can get the police, the sheriffs on horseback to do it, which
we're talking military, not sheriffs, not police. The military is a whole different ball of wax.
Well, when you had the National Guard, which is military, were called in when you had, what is it, Plessy, not Plessy versus first, Topeka versus the Board of Kansas, when they started integrating the schools. The National Guard were called in, and the citizens were going against the National Guard then. The notion that this can't happen in America does not make sense to me. I absolutely believe it can happen. I absolutely believe. Hopefully it doesn't. But if you can present a decent cause and you have enough military sympathizers, I absolutely believe it can happen. You've had military personnel leave here and go to ISIS and fight against the government. It just depends on how many of them you can find. But there's always folks who are willing to defect, commit
reason, or fight for the other side. The U.S. military is not immune to that. I guess I lost. You guys still there? You guys hear me? Let me know. I'm wondering, I see the comments still coming in way better than Steve Harvey. Let me know if you guys can hear me, because I don't know if I lost that caller or what. I'm gonna put another one on. Let me see if I make sure. Massoon. Let's see.
So I'm assuming, who are the domestic enemies? Okay. I don't know if can you hear me, Massoon?
Yes, I can.
Okay. All right. I don't know. For some reason, the last caller either dropped or I lost them. Okay. What's going on with you this evening?
First off, how are you tonight, sir?
I'm doing good.
That's good to hear. So I wanted to kind of give you a kind of a perspective. First of all, I'm still in school, and I want to kind of bring you a perspective of how it has become now within the modern day school, because it has come down now. It is completely different from the amount of bullying now that has happened. I know that you've had a caller actually mention bullying earlier. It has really taken a bad toll against so many people. I mean, just in my school alone, there's about 10 people every day that are down in our student center every day that are saying, having suicidal thoughts or wanting to just, I've even heard one case. I was actually walking to my next class and had actually heard that there was a kid saying, "Oh, I want to shoot the school up so bad." And we actually had a threat of that. Yeah. And so I kind of also wanted to also provide you with my perspective on how I think we should go about this. Because first of all, what happened is so tragic. And I even heard some people joking about it today. And I turned around and looked at them and I said, if you are joking about that, then I sure would hope that you, what kind of human would do that? What, the human decency of somebody to do that, to laugh about it. I mean, it's tragic. I don't think that we should abolish gun rights. I think we do need to start getting a little more strict on them, though. I think, for example, I had heard one of my friends and I were talking, and he said, he thinks, and I kind of agreed with him, if 21 and older to get a gun. Now, because then it's like you're out of the school. Now, yes, it does happen that there are a lot of adults who still, unfortunately, who have came and shot up schools. I have noticed, though, over a period of time that there are a lot of it has been school students who have just gone and shot up the school. What are your thoughts on that?
I certainly believe that when you're talking about something as deadly as a firearm, raising the age up to 21. Now, obviously, if you join the military, you can have access to firearms at a younger age. But in the military, they're specifically training you on how to use the firearm. And for the most part, there's a lot of control when you have access to it. You're not going to go on leave and go off base with an M14 or an M16 on you. So Absolutely. They have a lot of control on you. Whereas in society, and by the way, if you see the map that I have up behind me, that map, every state that's in pink or red, you can get a rifle at the age of 8. Require you to be 21 before you can get your hands on a rifle. So that's how many states allow what you're complaining about to happen. I totally agree that if you're 18, you're probably not mature enough to handle something as deadly as a weapon, as a rifle. So I would certainly be in favor of moving that age up to 21. And like I say all the time, there's a reason why auto insurance charge so much to young folks to drive a car. It's because they realize they're immature. They realize they can make mistakes. But we treat young 18-year-olds the same way we would do a mature 50-year-old when it comes to guns. We don't treat them any different And yeah, a lot of times the outcome is disastrous. But go ahead.
Absolutely. And your perspective, you laid it out beautifully. I agree with it 100%. It's honestly mind blowing to me that there are still we are having these types of problems, because another part of me has also just part of my perspective on everything has also come down to America has become so divided. You could say one thing and it could spark an all-out conflict throughout your job, your school, your house, and it really has just torn and ate up against people, and it has really divided everybody. To now, if I remember when you used to not have to, you could say something, and yeah, someone might not agree, but they would not attack you for it. They would, they would give you their perspective, but it would be a civil matter. It wouldn't be this all out, turn into this completely disrespectful, oh, you're not human just because you don't like this or you don't like that. Or you don't, you're not for America, I know a lot of people.
Yeah, I never could understand that, the notion that you're in favor of freedom, you're in favor of constitutional rights in the Second Amendment, but the minute somebody says something you don't like, if you don't like your country, you can pack or you need to get out. What happened to the First Amendment? What happened to freedom of speech?
Mm-hmm.
I totally agree with that. You make
Exactly.
a good point.
Absolutely, yes. And that is the thing I was also going to bring up, is it's like I do not necessarily stand for woke, or I don't do that. I stand for equal liberties and constitutional rights for everybody, because that's how it is here in America. That is what part of the American dream is, how free we are and how we have the right to do these certain things that a lot of other of these countries don't have the right to do. And when other people trash talk America, I mean, yeah, we've got our downs. Our politics can be pretty bad, but I mean, it's like you go live in North Korea, you go live in China, Russia, even. I mean, not criticizing their people, but it's like you go live there.
Yeah,
And
but let me say this in regards to what you're talking about. Anything looks good if you compare it to the worst. And oftentimes when folks talk about the freedoms we have here in America, they do what you're doing. They compare it to the worst of the worst. If you start comparing the freedoms in America to New Zealand or the UK, it suddenly doesn't look that great. But we just like when you hear folks talk about socialism, they make the comparison to the worst of the worst countries to make a point. They go to the extreme because there's a whole lot of, like the countries you were mentioning, North Korea and things. Those are literally like some of the worst, most oppressive countries on earth. There are obviously a lot of countries outside of the United States that are way above North Korea or China and things like that. So I have to speak up on that when we use the worst of the worst to compare countries to. Did I lose you? Okay, I'm gonna have to wrap it up, folks. My internet is buffering, and some folks have suggested that in the comments. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up for tonight. I do apologize. I don't know what the hell went on, and I will see you guys tomorrow because something's wrong.